Today's episode is sponsored by Dancesoft Gamers. Dancesoft Gamers is the leading distributor of video games and other consumer gadgets like the podcast microphone sets, ring lights, headphones, and affordable smartwatches, and many other cool gadgets. For these and more, visit their website at www.dancesoftgamers.co. That is www.dancesoftgamers.co. Mujevale, Mujevale, Mujevale. My name is Bani Kibuka, and welcome to another episode of the Ugandan Ball Talk Show.
First of all, I would like to introduce you to my listeners, all of you, the listeners who are going to tune into this or those who are listening. Today, I'm hosting Daniel Choudry, who is a dad, a sales warrior, author, international sales speaker. He does a lot of stuff. So today, we're going to be all over the place. I'm not going to say like all over the place, but we're going to get to know him, what he does, and what he does about sales. That's a quick introduction I can give about him. But since he's here on the podcast, and podcasts are not like radio sessions where they give you 30 minutes or they give you 2 minutes to talk, or it's like it's a podcast. You can talk whatever you want, however you want, and this is a place where we'll reveal everything. It's time. It's You're not in a rush. You're not chasing anything. It's my podcast. I'm not giving you a time limit. As long as it's okay with you or it fits in your program of the day, and it's an open conversation.
Yeah.
So I would like you to take the floor and introduce yourself a little more than what I just talked about.
Thank you, Bonnie. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching this from. I'm so delighted to connect with my brother Bonnie Chibuka on this fantastic podcast. I'm Daniel Choudry. I hail from the northern part of Uganda, a small, beautiful town called Kitgum. I'm the firstborn in a family of 3 on my mom's side, the firstborn in a family of 13 on my dad's side.
Oh, wow.
I've grown up with I have grown up with my mom, so I don't know much about the story of my siblings on my dad's side because they stay in the UK. My dad went to the UK, I think, in 1987, just shortly after I was born, I think. And I've never met him since. So I would say, I know he does exist, but we don't really have a relationship that much.
I'm gonna take it slow because I want to digest a little bit of some of the things you share about as we go along the way. You mentioned you grew up in Kitgum. How was life in Kitgum first before you moved to Kampala? How was that life growing up there? I know you said you didn't grow up with your dad, you grew up with your mom, but how was that life for you growing up as a child?
Bonnie, that's an interesting question, man. I don't know whether you're led by the spirit to ask some of these questions, because some of these questions really so deep into the core of who I am. So when my mom conceived, she was only 17 years old, and my dad said he wasn't responsible for the pregnancy. So my dad denied the pregnancy, in other words, and his family said, no, my mom cannot stay with them. They were more affluent family, wealthy, you could call it, by the standard. And my mom was coming from, the other side of the coin, fairly not having much. We were not poor to a point where we can't eat, we ate food, but we had a little bit of those challenges in the village. My grandpa was a subsistence farmer, so he was a good farmer. There was always food. So when my mom conceived, she didn't have, she was chased away from my dad's home. She came back to my grandmom, her mom. My grandmom also told her, you go and look for the man who impregnated you, you stay there. You're not going to stay in my house. So mom didn't have where to stay. She went to the Catholic Church and she requested the priest at the Catholic Church called Padibe Mission if she could be a cook for the priest in return for shelter. So for the 9 months when mom was pregnant with me, she was the cook for the priest. She was cleaning the compounds and the homes of the priest. And when she gave birth to me, the priest told her he could take her back to school if she could find where to keep the baby. So my mom took me back to my grandmother and my grandpa when I was only 2 months old, according to what they told me. My grandma already had a child then, our last born, a boy called Dale. So myself and Dale, we both breastfed of my grandmothers. And as you can imagine, very, very difficult and different circumstances. So I grew up knowing my grandmother as my mother. And my mom, I called my mom auntie until when I was like in my senior 4 in Uganda here.
Wow.
So it was a very dynamics. Yeah. So my grandfather introduced me to farming when I was so young, as early as 7 years old. My grandfather made me a small panga, and I had to go to the farm with him. And my task
I'll pause you there.
Cut down trees.
I wanted to clarify for the people who are in the United States.
I was giving you the entire story.
I was just gonna clarify a little bit for the listeners in the United States. The panga is like a machete. That's what we call a machete in the United States.
Yes, like a machete.
So for the listeners in the United States, I wanted to clarify for them so they're catching along with the story. But I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I was introduced to manual hard labor when I was so young, 7 years old. So we used to wake up early in the morning, as early as 3 a.m. And you walk about 10, 15 kilometers to the farm from home. The farm was pretty far towards the border of Southern Sudan, because my village, Padibe, is just about 15 kilometers away from Southern Sudan. So our farm was at the border. So we walk from 3 a.m. You walk during the morning dews. It's really, not the best, environment for a child to walk. And that was the life. So I go to the farm with my grandpa. We used to do communal farming. Today we go to this person's farm in the village. Everybody goes there. Tomorrow we go to Bonnie's farm. Everybody goes to Bonnie's farm. The next day we go to Daniel's farm. Everybody goes to Daniel's farm. For us, the children, our task was to cut down trees. So you could start cutting trees in the morning. You get to the farm, let's say at about 6 a.m. And you have to work in the farm until 5 p.m.
Wow.
Like you're working. Of course, they bring some water, you drink, they bring some porridge, you drink, they bring some food, you eat, but you have to keep working until 5 p.m. And then at 5, you have to fetch some dry firewood from the bush, carry it on your head, walk back again another 10, 15 kilometers back home. And that was the life. My grandfather used to say, as long as you work really hard in the farm, you'd always have what to eat. And you see, why people go to school is for one reason only. People go to school because they want to eat. So for me, I'm already giving you the best way to ensure that you always have food is when you go to the farm, do a good job. So I didn't have any interest whatsoever to go to school, because I knew as long as I could work well in the farm, there was always going to be food. But that changed, Bonnie. That changed back in 1996. That changed. My story actually really starts in 1996.
Okay.
I was in primary 4. I don't know what that would be in the United States. Probably you'll also explain it to the team.
Yeah. I think it would
be.
So
94 was in
primary 4 would be like in middle school. I would say it would be in middle school.
Middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went to school that day. Something very interesting happened. So there was this teacher, a maths teacher called Anthony Opoa. So he came, it's like, our school has never got a first grade in P7. And I'm training you now that when you get to P7, you get a first grade. Whoever will get a first grade in P7, you'll get a chance to go to the capital city of Uganda. And he asked us to respond in chorus. What is the name of the capital city of Uganda?
Was that to go and study in the capital city of Uganda, or was just to go and visit?
No, he was inspiring us. He was inspiring us that when we get a first grade in P7, you'll go and study. You'll go and study your secondary school in Kampala, the capital city.
Okay.
Yes. So it's like, I'm training you now that when you get to primary, you score first grades. And when you get first grades, you'll go to the capital city of Uganda. And he asked us to respond in chorus. What is the name of the capital city of Uganda? We all scream, Kampala. And it's like, Kampala is the most beautiful part of Uganda. When in Kampala, everybody in Kampala, they're wealthy. There are no poor people in Kampala.
Mm-hmm.
In Kampala, you'll see the tallest building in Uganda, Crested Towers. The building is so tall, it touches the clouds. Some people have lived up on the last floor that have never come down. Everything's provided for up there. And you can imagine, Bonnie, young man in P4, what that meant.
Yeah.
That man literally changed the entire wiring of my mindset. So my village is along the route the plane used to go to Europe. So every day you see quite a lot of planes passing by. So he asked us the question again, did you see the plane that is passing by? We're like, yes, teacher, we see. It's like inside the plane is like paradise. When you're inside the plane and you want to take some juice, you just press the knob next to your chair and say, I need some juice. Juice will come to you quickly. You want to eat some food, press another knob, food will come. You want to sleep, you press another knob, and your chair will automatically turn into a bed. And a very, very warm, luxurious blanket will cover you. You don't have to touch a thing. Inside the plane is like paradise. You get a first grade in P7. You'll not only go to Kampala, but you'll get a chance to go to a place called Entebbe International Airport, and you'll go and enter inside the plane. Just get a first grade in P7. So I'm training you now. So you must pay attention in class. Bro, I'll tell you, that teacher blew my mind. Like, I was blown away.
I can only imagine.
I became so obsessed. I became so obsessed with the idea of going to the city. And he was, he used an inspiration that I feel it's lacking in a lot of teachers. And then if there are some teachers watching this or listening to this podcast, I want to encourage you. You need to plant a seed of dream and ambition in the minds of your children, in the children that you teach. Because you see, why I'm having a conversation with you today, Bonnie, I mean, the genesis started right there in that, with that experience with the teacher. And so he said there are certain things you have to do. If you want to go to Kampala, there are certain things you have to do. If you're going to school in the morning, make sure you tuck in. When it's time for assembly, you don't stand at the back of the assembly. You have to be in front of the assembly so you can hear everything that the teachers say. When it's time for class, when the teacher asks a question, even if you do not know the answer, first put your hands up and give your answer. So sometimes the teacher could ask a question in the class, and my hand is up, even if I do not know the answer. So they're like, Daniel. So I'm like, teacher, I knew the answer. I just forgot. And the rest of the class would, blast into laughter. And it was a very interesting time. So you're asking me, what was the experience like growing up in Kitgum? I'm just trying to give you, a snippet of some of this experience. And I'll tell you, from that time, I became very focused on school matters. I started going to school with much more vigor. I could still go to the farm, of course. You wake up at 3, go to the farm, cut the trees up to about 6:30, 7 a.m., run very quickly, because by then now I had a bicycle. So ride the bicycle, come back home, wash your face, go to school. So 99, on the 26th of February, I was abducted by LRA, the Lord Resistance Army, the Kony rebels. So I don't know if this is a story, in the States there, I don't know what they know about the LRA war in northern Uganda.
I think some people have seen the story of Kony and some people know about this story. But yeah, I'm glad that you started this stuff, because that's what we're gonna go to that, and that's one of the reasons the person who connected me to you mentioned that. And I really want the listeners in the US to know about this story. And I'm so honored to have you. And yeah, you can go ahead and share with us that.
Yeah, so that now happened in 99. My very unfortunate time. It was a usual day. Wake up in the morning, go to the farm, cut down some trees before I come back home and prepare to go to school. So on that February 26th, I was going to the farm, and I was riding my bike alone. So I entered the ambush for the LRA, for the, and unfortunately, I was taken. My bicycle was chopped into pieces, and it was a very traumatizing experience, Bonnie. I spent 8 months in the bush, but what kept me alive was the desire to one day go to Kampala. So I was praying only one prayer that during the entire period, very scary moments. I was telling God, I don't want to die before I see Kampala. So I could say, just one more day. Maybe today is going to be the day to escape. Just one more day. We could move. We could walk in the bushes and forests and thorns of northern Uganda, from Kidgum, Gulu, Lira.
Today's episode is sponsored by Dance-Off Gamers. Dance-Off Gamers is the leading distributor of video games and other consumer gadgets like the podcast microphone sets, ring lights, headphones, and affordable smartwatches, and many other cool gadgets. For these and more, visit their website at www.danceoffgamers.co. That is www.danceoffgamers.co.
Yeah.
Hi,
Mimi,
Bonnie.
what
I
are you
wanted
doing?
to say hi.
Hi, how are you?
I work Sales Warrior, remember?
Yeah, you told me. We've already had the discussion with him before.
Awesome. Okay, bye.
Hey, we're gonna give you a shout out.
Yeah. Come back.
And
Yes.
I'll leave this piece when I'm editing the podcast. I'll leave this part in there. Say hi to the people.
Hi, Bonnie. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for connecting me to Daniel.
I'm great.
We're having a good conversation right now. It's really good to hear his story, and it's a good connection. So thank you very much for.
I told you I heard his story. I was equally very inspired. And I remember telling everyone I knew about it.
Yeah.
And that they had to listen to his story.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you get to interview him and equally learn from him.
Yeah, thanks very much for the connection, and tell the listeners not to stop here, so they should continue with the story because the story is going on.
Bye.
Bye. So yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I don't know if you knew a little bit of background with me and Tracy. We went to the same school, which is my pair. I went to the same high school with her. Yeah.
Okay.
So we were
Amazing.
in the same high school, just with my pair, and we've been friends ever since I can remember. I think since 2012.
So long.
Yeah, because that's when.
When
No,
did you
2011.
move to the States?
I moved here
You moved to the
2014.
States 2014. Okay.
Right after. No, it wasn't right after. I finished high school in 2012, so I stayed in Uganda 2013, and then 2014 I came over here.
Okay. But you come back home time to time.
Yeah, I come back home at least once a year. This year I did not, because I made other plans with some other things, and you have to have a budget. Like I usually budget like I knew this year because I wanted to go on a cruise. I'd never been on a cruise. I wanted to do one of those cruises. So I went on a cruise in the Bahamas. So I was like, you know what? If I go on a cruise, I won't go to Uganda. So I sacrificed Uganda for my cruise.
So have you done the cruise yet?
Yeah,
or you're going for it this Christmas?
I did it in July for my birthday because I turned 30. So I was celebrating my. Yeah, it was. I want to do something memorable. But anyway, let's go back to your story. You were talking about in February when you got abducted in the area, which is a really touching story, and I want my listeners to hear about that story.
Yeah, so I was taken. The first few days was, of course, really, really, painful, scary, traumatizing, as you can imagine. Many, many young children were abducted from the village where I come from. And the first few days we would just walk. You don't even sleep. Like you walk from one, town to another in the bushes and forests. And sometimes they get to some villages, they burn the village down. They abduct some other children. They kill some of the elders, and I had to watch that. And I'll tell you, Bonnie, it was a painful experience, man. It was quite painful experience, and so I decided to. Of course, the first few days you're so scared, you don't know what to do. But then my grandfather had once sat me down to talk to me. He said, son, I just want to tell you that God forbid, in case you are abducted, never show any sign of fear. Because when you show fear, then that's when they will, kill you.
Yeah.
Of course, he said it just, to give me some kind of lift and courage to face the situation as it is. So I just decided to say, you know what, I'm going to face this situation. And I went to the commander. I told him, I know the village very well. I know where there's a farm for agriculture, for cassava. I know where there are many cows. I know where there are goats. Of course, I'll tell you that wasn't the right thing to do, but it was survival for the fittest at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And the commander trusted me, and I was the kadogo for the commander. So we went through a rigorous training for 3 months, military training. So at the border between Uganda and Southern Sudan. And that's how the life started. And I was put in one of the battalions that was really nice.
Was your family looking for you at that time? And were you abducted just alone or with your other siblings?
No, I was going to the farm alone that day. So you see, I was 12 years old. I was 12 years old. And now I could ride the bicycle at the time. And my grandfather tells me, before you go to school, first go to the farm, cut down your trees, and then you come wash your leg and then go to school. So there was no going to school and leaving the farm work. So I had to first go to the farm and do my portion of the work.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was introduced to, this kind of work and hard labor quite early in my life. So that's why I was taken. And of course, there are several other children that were abducted in the village, from the village where I come from. Because when we're in the bush, you could see somebody you see another child you see another somebody and of course, they separated us after a few days. Some of the children are put in another group, another group of children put in another group. And it's just a brainwash, man. What those guys could do was properly brainwash you. Scare the hell out of you. And just use the American word, scare the shit out of you.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it was traumatizing. But I took the bravery and I told God, you know what? I'm not going to die here. I'm not going to die before I see Kampala, this capital city, because of what that teacher primary force. That when you study, you go to Kampala. There's no LRA in Kampala. Kampala, there's no war. So in my mind, the inspiration of Kampala was so strong, so powerful, that it kept me going even during the most difficult moments. As you can imagine, you can literally sleep only for 3 hours out of the entire day and night. Sometimes you don't sleep the entire night at all because you're walking. Sometimes you enter in a very bad ambush and then bullets is flying left, right, and center. And you pray to God that no stray bullet hit you. Sometimes you go to a village and then they're totally, destroying the village, burning the buildings, the houses, the huts down, and shooting people and cutting people down. So I watched that, Bonnie. Nobody told me. I watched that. And up to now, these are some of the traumas that I deal with. I wouldn't say I recovered from all that shit. But yeah, I was in the for 8 months. And I'll tell you.
You say 8 months?
I had to be brave. 8 months. 8 very painful months. And so we entered a very bad ambush sometime in October that same year. With the government soldiers, and bullets just started flowing left, right, and center. And I was hit on my leg, just below my knee. I was hit there, and the bullet got stuck in. I bled quite a lot. Then another bullet burst the side of my stomach, just on the side. And I bled from the leg because the bullet got stuck in there. And I took my shirt, I tied the wound, tied the bullet wound, and I told God I don't want to die before I see Kampala. Like I said, that was my only prayer. and I passed out.
I want to ask you a question
So
there.
when I woke,
Oh,
go ahead.
I like what you say. Like you ask God, like, "Hey, I don't want to die till I get to see Kampala." When did you
Yeah.
got introduced to God? And because that's the thing that helped you to stay strong and just making your prayer to God.
Yeah.
When were you introduced to God at the time before you got abducted?
Quite young, actually. So my grandfather, actually, my family is a very strong Catholic family.
Okay.
So I come from a very strong Catholic family, and we go to church every Sunday.
Okay.
It's a must. Everybody must go to church on Sunday. I was baptized for taking communion. I was confirmed by Bishop Joseph Kony. I remember at the time back in the village. I was an altar boy from when I was 8, 9 years old. So I come from a very
you grew up
rooted.
in a Christian home, so okay.
Yes. To date, we are still very strong Christian family.
Okay.
I think back in the state would call us, we are the Republican, I guess. Probably.
Yeah. So yeah, how so you kept saying that prayer to God that you don't want to die before you go to Kampala. So what was that breakthrough? When was it? Yeah. When was the breakthrough? What happened for you to get out of there?
Yeah, so the breakthrough was the ambush. We were going to meet the commander, and they called him the commander general, and that's Joseph Kony. We're going to meet him now, and we entered a very bad ambush. I think the government soldiers got to know about that movement of our battalion, our platoon movement. They got to know about it, and we entered a very bad ambush, and bullets just started flying, and then I was hit. I didn't even feel it. Like I just started. I was feeling my foot was wet. I didn't know what was wet. I thought I had stepped on some water or something, but I was actually hit. And when I looked, I was bleeding pretty badly, and I took my shirt and I tied the wound, and I was getting weak and weaker, and I hid a little bit under a tree, and I told God that prayer. Now, I just want to give a bit of a learning point here to the listeners and then those who are watching this podcast. I always ask people the question, what is your Kampala? What is the Kampala that you're chasing that amidst all the adversities of life, your Kampala keeps you going? What drives you? What is that Kampala that makes you overcome adversity against all odds? Because you see, I think for me to sit here with you today and have this conversation, the one thing that has always stood out very strongly is the fact that I've always aimed for my Kampala. At the time when I was in the bush, going to the actual Kampala actually kept me alive during the worst experience of my life, during the most excruciatingly traumatizing experience of my life. And I have not gone to the depth of what happened in the bush. And I would request that you permit me not to. Maybe if we get another, session where I am guided by my counselor who can help me to, stay afloat in the entire narratives of the conversation. Because a lot of nasty things happen when we're in there. And sometimes we lose hope. Sometimes we are in despair. Why? Because we don't have a good Kampala to chase. If your Kampala is not strong enough, then sometimes the hardships of life hit you pretty bad. And so the question that I would love everybody listening to this podcast to ask themselves and ask their neighbors and ask their family members, what is your Kampala? What is the one thing that keeps you going, even amidst the adversity of life, amidst all the challenges of life? Because if you do not have a strong Kampala to chase, then the hardships of life will hit you so bad that you will not get up, you may not stand up. So I came to the city for the first time on the 16th of June, 2005. So that's when I came to the city. So I went to Bishop Soprano for my A level.
Yeah.
And it was tough, but I got 16 points in my A level. In my vacation, since I didn't go back to the village. I stayed in Kampala. I was renting a small a room somewhere in Mutungu, a place called Mutungu,
Mutungo
on the
Bina.
hill. Yes, Bina. I was renting a place there for like 30,000. There was even no electricity inside,
Yeah.
but that's why I stayed. And I was looking for small projects to do, construction sites. I worked at the late Arona Jakairima's home in Buya. As a Shamba boy, I was there. I was doing, shoddy work, working on construction site. And from there, he connected us to Mr. Ponciano and Gabriano.
Mhm.
We capture shoppers Nakawa. So my vacation, again, worked at capture shoppers Nakawa from the day it was started to be constructed in around December 2006 until 2007 when the university opened.
Mhm.
So in my vacation, I saved about $700, $800, about $700 in my vacation. If I could translate, that's 2.8 million. I saved 2.8 million shillings.
Yeah.
And I was able to. I was admitted in Makerere University for business administration, and my study post was MOOBS, Makerere University Business School, and that's where my sales career started. So over to you from there if you have some questions.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I liked going through your story, and I'm not gonna ask you anything about sales because I'm gonna have a different whole podcast about that. But I'm glad you led us to the beginning of the sales, and we'll start from there for our other podcasts because I don't really want to make it too long for the
Too long, yeah.
yeah, for the people to not to listen to the whole conversation. So it'll be smart to break it in between. But I appreciate listening to your story. I appreciate and that's the thing I love about the podcast because I already mentioned that I like to host people here to share about their stories. And the reason for my podcast was I want to share my story with the kids back in Uganda. And after I'd shared all my story, I was like, you know what? There's a lot of other people out there that have stories that could inspire a child in Uganda. And stories like yours are the stories that inspire because I have listeners all over the world and I share.
Yeah.
I still have friends in Uganda who share my podcast, who listen to the podcast. Even though my biggest audience is in the United States because that's where I live right now, but a lot of kids down there will listen to it and they'll get inspired by your story. And I'm thankful that you were able to share that with us today. I'm sorry for all the either the memories that will bring back going through your story, but it's for the good cause for somebody else to get to learn about it. But like you mentioned, like bad things happen, but they don't kill you. And I've learned a lesson too. Like, what is your Kampala? Like, you have to have that question on the back of your mind. And I hope the listeners will pick out something like, what is your Kampala? Like, look.
I have a new Kampala now. I have a new Kampala now. The next time we do another podcast, I'll show you Kampala.
Yeah, we're gonna get to the next podcast we're gonna make, and after we get off the phone, I want to schedule that with you. The next recording we're gonna make will be now to the Kampala, so we're gonna digest the Kampala. But yeah, I like all the lessons you've put through while you're sharing your story. That's really good. The end of the podcast, I usually ask people some questions, but one of the questions I'm not gonna ask you for you because the whole story you gave was a life lesson. Because one of the questions I ask people, what has been a life lesson in life for you?
Yeah.
But I feel like what you've shared the whole today is a life lesson. You've been giving those hints.
There's quite a lot of lessons.
But one of the questions I'm gonna ask you is, what gets you excited about life?
Meaning.
Yeah.
Meaning, finding meaning in everything that I'm doing, making a contribution. Now, as I grow older, I'm 35 now. As I grow older, I'm more focused on: does my life mean something? Am I touching other people's lives? Am I creating some transformation and giving people hope, so that they can also be brave to face their life head on, despite the challenges that they may be facing on a daily basis? So finding meaning gives me so much fulfillment, and that's the one thing that has kept me going amid all the turbulence.
That's really
just seeing people smile, people seeing
Mhm. The other question I usually ask people is, I don't think you don't have to answer because I'm gonna have you again here on the podcast. Is usually I ask who would you like to see on my podcast next, and you recommend somebody. So maybe for the next segment, that
That
should be
would,
back. Huh?
that would be me for the next
Yeah,
one.
that would be you. So that's why I say like you gotta come back. So that's the question I usually ask. But once again, I'm so excited. I'm so pumped for the people to listen to your story. And the story doesn't end
Yeah.
here. So the listeners should look forward for another episode that we'll bring out here. Yeah, and I was connected to you through Tracy, who works in your company. I went to school with Tracy. Actually, she has an episode
Yes.
here. I'm gonna send you the link to her episode. I recorded a podcast with her, and she was really good. She did really good. She talked about finances, and you guys are working in
Yeah.
sales and stuff. She talked about finances, and she was super ready. I'll send you the link so you can check out how she represented, and she did a good job. And the
Sounds
audience.
brilliant.
Yesterday I went back through my videos that I'd done before, and then there was a
Mhm.
comment from a girl.
Yeah.
She commented on her episode, and she was like, Tracy, you're the reason I'm living in Canada. I was gonna send it to her. I was gonna share with her because I
Gotta send that to her.
yeah, I'm gonna send it to her because like
You
she said like you're the reason I'm in Canada because you kept inspiring me and motivating me, and I took a screenshot of that and I'll send it to her to show her. And we recorded this months and months ago, but she commented I
Yeah.
think 2 days ago. But that was really cool, and I just wanted to shout out to her for representing your company very well and doing a good job. And
No,
when if you
she's
check it out, you
fantastic
also know.
backbone of that.
Yeah.
No,
So
share with me.
yeah,
Yeah, share with me.
yeah. So other than that, if there is anything else you want to say to the listeners or your final words, you can go ahead and do that. And
I just want to say this. I'm a passionate reader, Bonnie. I
Mhm,
read quite a lot, and this book I read recently by Robin Sharma. Robin Sharma in the books. There's a book called The 5 A.M. Club.
mhm,
So in the 5 a.m. club, it talks about the two types of people, the superficial people and the granular people. Said the superficial people, they love entertainment quite a lot. They love the quick rush of dopamine, entertainment, pleasure. And if you're somebody who is always seeking pleasure, you find that somehow your path to fulfillment, your path to contribution, your path to achievement will be a little limited. And then the categories that he encourages all of us to be is granular, more deep and profound.
mhm,
These are deep, profound people. They spend as little time watching television. They use their brain to the maximum. They're always reading, seeking for knowledge. They are seeking mentors and coaches. You can't do this life alone. You need some people who have already walked the journey ahead of you to
mhm,
guide you here, guide you there. You read some nice insights here, read some nice one there. So be more granular. Do not be a superficial person who is always chasing pleasure.
mhm.
He said superficial people, they want to start dating today. They know you today. They don't even know your full names, but they're already saying, let's go and have sex.
Yeah.
That's being very superficial. You just look for that quick rush of pleasure. And we live in a society today where young people are very superficial. And because of that, we are not creating anything serious. We are in the world of social media fame, TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and people are looking for clout, and they do all nasty things to seek clout, but they're not deep and profound. They're not people of substance. So I want to encourage our generation. We need to be men and women of substance. So let's be much more deep and profound. Let's seek guidance from our elders who have come ahead of us, and some of them have done very well. Some of them have not done very well. We have to learn from both sides, from the successful and the one who have not succeeded. There's always something to pick from both sides. and it can help to guide your footstep to be more granular, to be much more intentional in chasing your Kampala. Above everything else, don't forget, each one of us have a Kampala to chase. Let your life mean something. Let your life be worth something. In terms of contribution, in terms of meaning, whichever what meaning means to you. It's been a profound experience with you, Kony. I'm looking forward to a much more tactical, sales-oriented, business-oriented conversation where I want to believe I will be able to do a great conversation with the folks. I wish everybody on this podcast well. And my brother, what you're doing here is fantastic. I appreciate you. Have a great time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And I'm not going to add to that, but thank you very much for being here. Let's keep in touch. Hi.
All right, man.
All right.
Not a question.
Hey there, this is Bonnie Kibuka, the host of the Ugandan Boy Talk Show. Thanks for watching and listening to my podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with a friend and recommend somebody to this podcast. Don't forget to leave a feedback on this podcast because that's how we grow. And also don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. Join us on our social media platforms on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. So we would love to hear from you. Thank you very much and be blessed.